Before I begin, I would like to give you a brief preview on the information that I'll be sharing with you today. First will be 5 core concepts directly out of the text. Those 5 core concepts talk about individual behavior and the way that we kind of perceive organizations. The second will be look at real-world application of some of those same concepts. Third will be a biblical perspective, the way that we as Christians kind of view organizations and the way we should view organizations as it relates to us personally. Finally, we'll do a brief wrap-up or review, and then I'll have some discussion questions for you at the very end for you to, kind of get a small debate going on Blackboard, or maybe a discussion. The first core concept are the people in the organizations. In order to have an organization that runs smoothly, you need good people. Those people also need a sense of relationships. And relationships, according to Ken Sand of The Peacemaker, he indicates that relationships are built off of expectancy. Individuals expect certain things when they give certain things. The text pretty much makes the very same argument. It indicates that we expect things when we contribute to an organization. Then the organization is expected to give us inducements. Those are the exact terms out of the book. It indicates the contributions that we make are things like our time and our expertise, while the organization gives us things like money, or they give us benefits, or the company car. And all these things work directly. Now, the needs that we have, or the expectancies that we have, are not always met. The text also indicates that we have to look at the person job fits. The person job fit indicates that we have to make sure that contributions we're giving are met by the inducements that we're receiving. Organizations generally don't meet those things because they fail to understand sometimes what our value that we perceive ourselves as having, which is why communication and a course like this is critical to our ability to begin to be able to solve those issues. The final piece is individual differences, which I think the rest of this presentation speaks volumes to as well, because individual differences we have to recognize as more than just the color of a person's skins or their biological makeup. It is the way that they perceive the world, it's their personality, it is all of the things that kind of makes them who they are. The second core concept that we discuss here is personality. It's the things that make us who we are. And personality generally is a long set thing. It's not something temporary like attitudes, which we'll actually talk about next. But personality indicates that it is the way that we perceive the world, it's the way that we react. The text indicates that there are a few different ways for us to do this. The first suggestion they give is the Big Five, personality traits. Those things, it ranges from openness to extrovertedness to agreeability to stability. All of these things kind of controlling and saying these are the ways that we perceive organizations and the way the organizations perceive us. It also begins to tell organizations the type of people they need in order for them to be successful. The second survey that option they have for us to evaluate personality traits is the Myers-Briggs framework, which most people have taken. We all have kind of taken the test in most of our business one-on-one classes, try to see what type of personality we have and the way that we would fit in organizations. That starts with 4 basic categories, and from that category, 16 subcategories arrive, which indicate this is the type of personality that you have, which probably suits best with this type of industry. The final one is emotional intelligence, which takes a lot more time and is something more recently that we've been using to try to figure out the way that people perceive themselves in relation in organizations, as well as in their personal lives. The emotional intelligence indicates that we need to be able to understand how we feel as well as how other individuals feel. This is not a call for being empathetic, but more of a call towards being able to understand or get to know individuals better. The third core concept would be attitudes, the way that we feel about ourselves, right? That attitudes shape the way that people conduct business and interact with each other. Attitudes are shaped by 3 different things. Ready? It's affect, cognition, and intention. These things are generally called the attitude structure. The attitude structure dictates the way that we perceive or interact with people on a daily basis. And when we take all these things together, it actually controls the actions that we take towards other individuals. After we have the attitude structure, we have other factors for attitudes, such as cognitive dissonance, which talks about the anxiety a person experiences when they simultaneously possess 2 sets of knowledge, or when they're doing conflicting things. When you say that you should lose weight, but then you go on a binge, that would be cognitive dissonance. The next kind of way we can look at attitudes is how they relate to businesses, the business itself. Work-related attitudes that we have. always satisfied with the job that we have. A lot of times people can form attitudes or opinions about their organization because they're not satisfied. Some people aren't fulfilled, some people are overstretched, and we need to be able to recognize and resolve those issues as quickly as possible. Also, it's the organizational commitment, whether or not you are fully committed to your organization, and that can stem from several things. Most of the time it stems from you feeling like you have some need that's unmet in the organization, not trying to fulfill that need. Then finally, we have the affect and moods in organizations. You can either be positively effective or you can be negatively effective. One, positively effective indicates that you're upbeat, you're optimistic, you're always trying to be around and see things in a positive light, while the negative affectivity indicates that you're downbeat, you're very pessimistic. You see everything in a very bad way, which cannot at all be good for your organization that you're a part of, which is something that we can try to learn to address. But either way, as managers, as future leaders, we have to understand that all these things exist directly in our organization, and our best bet is to try to resolve that as quickly as possible. But you have to be able to understand it first, which is where the next portion comes in, which is perception in organizations. Now, when it comes to perceptions, you're either going to be, the glass half full or the glass half empty type of person. But no matter what, you should just get over it and say that there's a glass, which is what pretty much this portion of the chapter talks about. It talks about when people have perception, we need to make sure that our perception is never kind of tainted so much that we don't actually see the real picture. It talks about a selective perception, where you pick and choose parts that you omit directly from memory, or you omit directly from what you know is true, because that seems to be the most fitting thing for you to do. That is not at all a good practice to have, nor it is a reason why we should engage in that type of practice. The next will be stereotyping as a perspective, and as a perception. And stereotyping indicates that when we label individuals according to a single attribute, that it could lead to negative things. In any instance, whether it's politically, socially, according to religion, or economically, there is never a good instance of stereotyping, because it always seems to marginalize an individual, because it categorizes them, it puts them into a category while removing their own personal autonomy. The second portion of the perception is the perception and attribution as it exists. So we have attribution theory, which indicates that we attribute cases to behavior based on our observations of that certain type of behavior. So if you come into work every single day at 8 o'clock and you leave work every day at 5 o'clock, I would automatically assume that that is just your normal thing. That is what you always do. But at the same time, you might not be getting there at 8 o'clock. You might have someone checking in for you at 8 o'clock, and my assumptions would therefore be wrong. So attribution theory indicates that we kind of attribute things to certain behaviors. The fifth and final core concept is workplace behaviors. Now, we all know that because we have individuals that are different, and because we have people, we have personalities, we have attitudes, and we have perceptions that exist in organizations, that means that we're going to have behaviors that some are good, they're conducive for productivity, and some aren't conducive for productivity. You have performance behaviors, and those performance behaviors are ones that individuals put on display. They want people to recognize them for certain things. You have the loud, fast talker, or you have the or you have the popular person in your office space. That's a performance behavior. And then you also have dysfunctional behaviors, the things that distract kind of from the organizational structure. It takes away from the ability for the organization to be successful, as well as operate smoothly, because it's always some type of issue that has to be dealt with on a regular basis. Some example of dysfunctional behaviors would be absenteeism. Or turnover. Absenteeism indicates people that just don't show up to work. Turnover rate is people that just quit. Currently in Lynchburg right now, we have a very high turnover rate for our police officers, because our system is not the best system to have. So that spills over into the community having other types of problems. The final part of workplace behavior is organizational citizenship, which I'm going to talk about more when we get to the real world impacts. But organizational citizenship indicates that people need to feel like they're a part of something. They need to feel like they belong with the organization, like they're in the right job. And it's our responsibility to make sure that that is true. Since we've discussed the 5 main concepts, let's go over some real-world implications for them. The first would be an article written by Marilyn Gist. She wrote Self-Efficacy, Implications for Organizational Behavior and Human Resource Management. It's a survey she took to review the way that self-efficacy kind of affected a person's task. their persistence, and their ability to express interest, other level of goal of difficulty for their performance itself. And so that organizations have given very little attention to self-efficacy because of the fact that not too much at that point in time, which was written in 1987, was known about it. There wasn't a lot of surveys conducted, but this survey talks about that people need to feel a kind of sense that they can perform their ability that they have, and a lot of that is done by things like training. So to invest in training, not just to put someone new in a position because they're new there, or because they have a college degree, does not necessarily mean they can perform a task without some type of external education as well. So an organization needs to be kind of tuned in on that. The second article that was written by two gentlemen, Robert Mormon and Gerald Blakely. They indicate that they look at individualism versus collectivism and the way that organizational citizenship needed to exist. And the way that they said that the best way for that to exist, according to a survey they took in a small firm, was that you needed to have a sense of collective identity. Not collective identity in the sense that you need to feel like you ideologically belong with a group, but that you just fit in socially. A lot of times at businesses, just because you can make the same sprocket that I make does not mean that we get along perfectly, because we still may have some internal differences. They say we need to get rid of those internal differences and then reinsert kind of the way that we interact with individuals on a very social basic level, and then the ideology will follow because individuals feel like they're in a family type atmosphere. We've kind of talked about the theory from the textbook, and we've talked about the real-world implications that we see through some literature review. Now let's talk about the biblical application. And I'm going to mainly talk about managers and servants. I feel like managers and servants are not mutually exclusive. They have to coincide within one individual. You can't be one without the other. And I think that the most basic places this comes from is the parable of the servant given in Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. Jesus explains to us a situation where servants are given equal amounts of money. They're given equal tasks. And each one performs different actions with those tasks. One hides it, one goes off and splurges, and the other one holds it for the master to return. So the question is, what exactly is our responsibility as Christians in the workplace? According to Matthew 25 and according to the Institute for Christian Teaching, I think that it shows us a few things. And I will share a couple with you, and I encourage you to look at the notes section of the PowerPoint in order to get kind of a more expanded view of this, because I am running short on time. I think the two important things to take away from this is that a steward is accountable. The steward has to give a report of what he or she has done. And the reward or the punishment that goes along with that account is not done so because of of what the steward returns, but the attitude that the steward has in that process. I think one of the most important things we can take away from this is that the stewards, we have a responsibility to be both managers and servants. And in that responsibility, we have to do it in a way that we're sure edifies Christ. And when we do that, I think that we'll find even the very menial, trivial tasks that we have to do on a day-to-day basis at our job become something that's glorifying to Him. And when we take that viewpoint, then it changes the dynamic of the relationship we have, not only with the business that we work with or work for, but the individuals that we work with at the same time, as well as the people that we're directly in contact with. I think this all begins to change the way that that business works in general. And I think when we take this viewpoint, it'll critically kind of change the way that we have business and we have organizations. So, in this short amount of time, I've shared with you 5 core concepts as they exist for organizations and individual behavior: people, personality, attitudes, perceptions, and workplace behaviors. I've shared with you some real-world application of some of the core concepts that we've had here through literature review. I'll share with you kind of the biblical perspective that we have. Thank you so much for watching.